Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers. This is ENI 255 and Module 9, and we are working on rigid body constraints. And here is the hinge constraint. So I'm going to show you how to do that. There are different ways. You can look at some of these right here. You can do one active, one passive, or two active rigid bodies. And this is one of my favorite ones. I use this all the time in animations. Really easy to use. You can use it as a hinge for a trap door. You can use it for, depending on the motion that you want to create. I'll show you both. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we are back to our scene with just the floor with a passive rigid body, and we're going to create a couple of, I'm going to create a cube by itself over here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create another cube, and we're going to bring this up. I'm going to go into the front view here. Okay. It's not letting me stay in here, so I'm going to go in here and flatten that out and expand it out just a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and go in perspective and take a look at what that looks like. Just flatten it out a little bit more, widen it. And in here, let's go ahead and start positioning it and kind of off center, so you can see a little bit right here. It's off center. Let's move it up. I'm not sure how we're going to space these, but go ahead and do Control D and move it down. We don't want them to hit each other, so I'm going to move that off. You can see I'm off centering them. Them to be about the same. We don't want the ball to hit the center, because then that won't work. Let's move that over a little bit more. There we go. And we'll know if we need to make changes or not. Okay, do one more. Alright. And then, alright, totally evenly spaced. I'm going to go ahead and move them up so they're more evenly spaced. Okay, there we go. So we have a little overlap on each one, and that's needed, except for this one we need to overlap it. I'm not sure how much we need to have it overlapped. We'll have to see how the ball reacts to everything. And then we're going to create a ball, which is way too big for this simulation, so let's go ahead and scale that down a little bit. Something like that would work just great. Okay, so let's say it drops from right about here. We want it to be off center. If you drop it in the center, it'll just plop down and maybe slowly move over. So we're going to move it to the side so it reacts right away. Alright, so everything's going to be an active rigid body. Okay, so they can react to each other. This one just got a little guy by himself. It's going to be by himself for a little while until we get back to him. But let's go ahead and select these guys here. And I'm going to do a hinge constraint on one at a time. Okay, so I'm going to click on, actually I should select everything, center pivot, delete by type history, freeze transformation. That helps clear everything out. And then I can go in here and do a hinge constraint on these. So I'm going to go to field solvers, go into create hinge constraint, and you can see we have interpenetrate. We could turn that on to make things, speed things up a little bit. Or we could just click on set position, which I'm not going. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to change anything here. I want it to hinge right in the center. Now, if you want to change the hinge position, you can at any time. So don't worry about having to do this up front. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create, and then I'm just going to hit the G key for each one of them. So I'm going to select the next one, hit the G key. It remembers the last operation, so that makes it nice and fast. And then with the ball, I'm just going to go in here and create active rigid body. Okay, and so we need to add that to the gravity field, and all the rest of them need to see the gravity field as well. So let's go ahead and click on all of these. Probably the best thing to do. There we go. And go to Windows, Relationship Editors, Dynamic Relationships, so we can see we can click on all of these 4 fields. Okay. So now we got it all set up. Let's go ahead and play the simulation, and it works perfectly. Almost looks like you see like little buzzing bees around. Just ignore those. But there you go. Those are going to turn forever. And they're going to turn forever because we need to change the dampening. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and stop that and rewind it. Stop and rewind. Okay, so now we need to just change the dampening of these. Now, there are not too many of these, but what you could do, if you felt like this is kind of a pain in the butt to do, you would select all the ones that you want to change at one time. So if we want to change everything at one time, you'd have to use the Windows component attribute spreadsheet. So you would use the attribute spreadsheet for that. To do, it's like let's say you have like a lot of dominoes, right? So you'd want to go in there and change, let's see, where's my keyable, the rigid body, here we go. So we would need to, let's get that open a little bit more if I can. And here's the impulse, center mass. Looking for dampening, there it is. So I could add dampening to all those all at once. And you're going to want to do this if you have like hundreds of dominoes that you need to do. And this, you open up the attribute spreadsheet. And again, I keep forgetting where it is, but Windows, General Editors, attribute spreadsheet, and that'll open that up. And I'm only going to do a couple of them. There's not a whole lot to do. There's only 4. There's not hundreds, so I don't mind doing this. But I wanted to show that to you if you wanted to go in there. And I'm going to bring this up pretty high. I don't want those spinning around, so I'm going to do those up to 4 and make them a little bit more realistic than they are. So there we go. Let's say they got a little bit of resistance, which is nice. And you could even add more if you want to. Okay. And of course the ball, you can also change because there are 2 things that are interacting with each other. This is a more complex simulation. We've got a lot more things going on. So the idea here is that you can go in here and change the static friction and dynamic friction so the ball doesn't roll as freely. You could have the ball roll totally freely by just typing in 0 on that first one, right? If you wanted to. You could have the bounciness like crazy huge. I don't think that's crazy huge, but you know. It depends on what you're trying to do with your simulation. If your ball's not moving as fast as you want, then you want to turn those down. If it's freely moving too fast for you, you can turn those up. As long as you have 2 objects that are hitting each other. Again, remember the ball has friction on too. So let's say if I turn this all the way up to like 1 and it's still not working like I want, you could turn that up to 1 too as well. Just remember that ball is going to hit other things that you may not want to have as much friction on, so you would have to go in here and keyframe that. Okay, so that's basically it. Just got to remember, we've got, when you click on something, you've got the attribute sheet editor. If you have a lot of objects in there, so the attribute spreadsheet, that'll let you do several things at one time, and changing those all at once like I showed you. And then you can do it one at a time, and you can animate any of these things by right clicking over it and setting a key. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a hinge to this cube. So I'm going to go into solvers fields and go into adding a hinge constraint on that. By itself, create, I'm going to move that over to the side. So now you can see that here's the hinge, and this could be used as a trapdoor too if you wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and add gravity to this. Go to Windows, Relationship Editors, and go ahead and add a gravity field to that. So now it'll swing around. Okay, just like that, like a swing. And you can use it for several things. Again, you'd want to apply dampening of 0.1 at least to show more of a realistic movement. Alright, that's it for hinges. So hopefully you will have enough information now to go ahead and start playing around. And we'll be using all these techniques on the Rube Goldberg machine that we're going to use, that we're going to create together. And then you're going to go on to creating a mousetrap Rube Goldberg simulation. Alright, I'll see you in the next video.